too much about her. I'm all for ventilating her head and leaving her here.
Just simmer down, woman, simmer down.
It's the basic formula for escaping from the Siamese human knot. I just recalled it. Ready?
Picture this: Batman and Robin are tied to a ticking bomb. Death is counting down second by second, and Batgirl, she's standing right there, arms crossed, calmly watching her two male colleagues struggle. Not because she froze, not because she couldn't help, but because she hadn't been paid equally yet. Meanwhile, just off set, the producer was calling in a tailor to cut more fabric off her costume. The reason ratings were dropping, and they figured Batgirl's chest would save the show. These are just a few of the embarrassing secrets that the Batman 1966 filmmakers never wanted you to know about their perfect heroine. 10. Batgirl was added solely to save the collapsing ratings of Season 3.
Now, here's a plan.
You're caring too much about her. I'm all for ventilating her head and leaving her here.
Just simmer down, woman, simmer down.
After 2 explosive seasons that became a cultural phenomenon, the empire of Batman began to crack. The once beloved pow bam zap formula that had driven America wild was now starting to feel outdated and repetitive. Audiences began to drift away from Gotham, leaving empty seats in front of television screens. Inside a smoke-filled meeting room, producers William Dozier and Howie Horowitz were in a state of real panic. They knew that without a strong enough boost, the show would be canceled immediately. And so Batgirl was introduced as a last-ditch rescue move. The filmmakers didn't even try to hide their intentions when they bluntly stated, "We need someone that little girls can identify with and big boys will want to look at." It was a calculated 2 birds with 1 stone strategy: create a female empowerment figure to attract younger viewers, while also leveraging the sex appeal of Yvonne Craig in a tight costume to retain male audiences. The truth was, even more blunt ratings research at the time showed that episodes featuring Catwoman consistently hit record highs due to her irresistible allure. But since Catwoman couldn't appear all the time, they needed a replacement Rose with similar appeal, and Batgirl became that perfect choice. They even invested in an 8-minute pilot segment just to pitch the character and convince ABC to greenlight Season 3. But reality didn't match expectations. Despite being seen as a life-saving remedy, Batgirl couldn't stop the decline of a fading empire. Season 3 ratings continued to drop, budgets were slashed so severely that the sets became noticeably cheap. In the end, Batman 1966 was canceled. As you can see, Yvonne Craig's Batgirl was energetic and charming, but behind that sexy purple mask lay an uncomfortable truth about how 1960s Hollywood used women as a temporary bandage to cover the deep cracks of a dying television show. 9. Batgirl's tight costume had to be urgently modified because it didn't emphasize her curves enough.
Get her ready for the grand opening. Yes, my dear. You will make a perfect pinafore.
Do you remember the moment Batgirl first appeared in Season 3 of Batman 1966? Honestly, I found her incredibly attractive. With her blonde hair, long legs, and form-fitting suit that highlighted every contour. But few people know that behind that dazzling appearance was a rather embarrassing story from the set. When Yvonne Craig first tried on the Batgirl costume, William Dozier watched for a moment and shook his head. He bluntly told the crew, "We hired Yvonne for 2 reasons, and I don't see either of them. Cut the suit." He wanted it tighter, far tighter, so it would clearly emphasize her curves and attract big boys, meaning adult male viewers. The crew had to rush alterations within just a few days. They cut the neckline lower, tightened the waist, and made the lurex fabric cling to her body like a coat of purple paint directly on her skin. The result was a visually striking outfit, but extremely punishing for Yvonne. The lurex material of the 1960s didn't stretch like modern spandex. It was hot, suffocating, and so thin that she could barely wear undergarments underneath, fearing visible lines under the harsh studio lights. She had to perform all day drenched in sweat, sometimes avoiding drinking water just to prevent needing bathroom breaks, because putting on and taking off the costume required up to an hour with multiple assistants. Even so, Yvonne had to maintain a bright smile, dance, perform ballet kicks, and ride the bat cycle as if nothing was wrong. 8. Batgirl was constantly turned into a damsel in distress, captured, tied up, and needing Batman and Robin to save her. There is a painful contradiction when we look back at Batgirl in those old episodes. On one hand, she was introduced as an independent, intelligent woman, a well-educated librarian with combat skills comparable to Batman himself. But on the other hand, once the cameras started rolling, we often saw the beautiful Batgirl tied up in deadly traps, waiting to be rescued by her male counterparts. It was a strange loop of that era's storytelling turning a superhero into a flower in a glass case. The term damsel in distress became an unwanted label attached to Batgirl throughout Season 3. Despite being marketed as an equal, the scripts repeatedly pushed her into vulnerable situations. It wasn't hard to find scenes where Batgirl was captured by villains like Joker Penguin or Catwoman chained up, locked in cages, or suspended over deadly pits. This raises a controversial question. Why would a heroine capable of riding a powerful motorcycle and performing her own combat moves constantly need saving from Batman? And Robin film analysts later pointed out that this was a calculated move to preserve the male-dominated hierarchy of 1960s television. Batgirl could be skilled and attractive, but she could never outshine Batman. Turning her into a bound victim not only added dramatic tension, but also reinforced Adam West's role as the ultimate savior. For Yvonne Craig, this sometimes became frustrating. She had hoped for more opportunities to let her character act independently, but ultimately had to accept scripts where she was literally tied down by ropes and by rigid gender expectations. Batgirl may have shined brightly, but she remained a prisoner of her time, a princess turned superhero, only to wait to be rescued. 7. Batgirl went on strike for equal pay before agreeing to save anyone.
Holy homecoming! Egghead and Olga!
Queen of the Bessarabian Cossacks!
No doubt back to bother, badger, and bewilder Gotham City once more.
Do you remember the scene where Batman and Robin are tied to a ticking bomb? Death closing in, but instead of rushing in to save them, as usual, Batgirl stands there with her arms crossed, calmly watching her two male partners struggle. This wasn't a script error, it was one of the most iconic moments in pop culture, when even a superhero went on strike over social injustice. This moment originated from a public service announcement PSA by the U.S. Department of Labor, where Batgirl delivered a real shock. She refused to rescue the dynamic duo after discovering she was being paid less than them. Batgirl, once just a supporting character, suddenly became an early symbol of female empowerment. But what makes this even more interesting is how the PSA subtly calls out the unfair treatment that Yvonne Craig endured throughout Season 3. In the official Batman, Batgirl was often written as a kind of ineffective hero. Have you noticed she almost always arrives late, typically when Batman and Robin are already on the verge of defeat or about to meet their end? Only then does Batgirl swoop in on her motorcycle. This delayed entrance wasn't because she was incapable, but because the script deliberately held her back so she would never outshine or outpace her male counterparts. That's why the moment she stands there with folded arms, watching Batman tied to a bomb in that 1973 PSA, feels like a sweet act of revenge. It shows that beneath the mask and the ballet kicks, Batgirl is a woman aware of her worth, someone willing to use her influence to demand fairness. She is no longer the late-arriving sidekick meant to fill space, but a hero bold enough to stand up for values that Hollywood itself often ignored. 6. The Batgirl cycle, over 130 kilograms of danger, was a killer machine that nearly injured the actress.
In Barbara Gordon's bedroom, Batgirl has a very similar idea. But even as she starts her own investigation...
Few people realize that Batgirl's coolest-looking gadget was also one of Yvonne Craig's greatest nightmares, the Batgirl cycle. On screen, she glides effortlessly like a purple streak of lightning, riding a stylish motorcycle with decorative fins that look powerful and elegant. But behind the scenes, the truth was a complete cinematic illusion. The bike was actually a modified Yamaha that was already heavy to begin with, but after adding all the bulky decorative pieces, it weighed over 136 kilograms, around 300 pounds. The worst part: to install those flashy fins and signature bat-like wings that matched her costume, the crew removed the bike's shock absorbers. As a result, the center of gravity shifted off balance, turning it into a dangerously unstable machine that was extremely difficult to control. Every time she rode over a pothole or even a small bump on set, Yvonne felt as if her entire skeleton was being violently shaken apart. She once bitterly compared riding it to jumping off a table with stiff legs and landing heel first on concrete, painful jarring and rattling through every cell in your body. And it didn't stop there. Because the bike was so heavy and unbalanced, Yvonne fell off repeatedly during filming. There were moments when the motorcycle toppled over onto her, causing real panic on set. She later stated that handling this machine was the biggest challenge she faced, not the fight scenes. It's ironic to look like a fierce, glamorous biker heroine. The price she paid was bruises all over her body and a lingering fear every time the engine roared to life. Superheroes may look invincible on screen, but in front of this 300-pound beast, Batgirl was just as vulnerable as anyone else. 5. Batgirl was never allowed to fall in love, and her romantic kiss was taken away by producers.
It's the basic formula for escaping from the Siamese human knot. I just recalled it. Ready? I'm beginning to wiggle my ears under my cowl.
In the colorful world of Gotham during the 1960s, audiences were used to seeing Batman surrounded by romance. From the deadly charm of Catwoman to the passionate kisses he shared with guest female characters, in almost every episode, the Dark Knight never seemed to lack love. But if you look closely, you'll notice a quiet and rather heartbreaking absence beside him. Batgirl, the proud heroine who never once experienced a true on-screen romance. It's a frustrating truth for anyone who ever shipped Batman and Batgirl. She was turned into a purely functional action figure. While other characters were free to fall in love, Batgirl was confined within an extremely strict image. Yvonne Craig once shared in an interview that she had hoped for at least one romantic moment, a gentle kiss with Adam West, to add depth and connection to her character. But the producers shut that idea down immediately. The reason behind this decision was both absurd and deeply rooted in bias. They wanted to preserve Batgirl as a pure and virtuous figure, a moral role model for young girls of that era. Ironically, this conservative mindset turned Batgirl into the loneliest character in the series. She had no love interest, no emotional vulnerability, only action scenes, ballet kicks, and being repeatedly captured. Behind that seductive purple mask, Batgirl was not just a superhero, but a princess trapped within rigid moral expectations, denied the right to love and to experience happiness, all in service of a hollow lesson in television morality. 4. The torture hood that caused real pain and even bloody kicks on set.
Forget your burrow. Get on the back of my Batgirl cycle and show me where your hideout is.
On that thing, but I might be extinguished.
All right, then. Stay here.
When people think of Yvonne Craig's Batgirl, they remember not only her radiant smile, but also that iconic, shimmering purple cowl with its proud bat ears. But behind that goddess-like image lies a rather painful truth, one that honestly makes me feel sorry for my childhood crush. Few people know that in the very first version, seen in the unaired pilot, the cowl was a literal nightmare. It was designed with sharp, rigid edges and fit so tightly that the hard plastic would constantly press and dig into Yvonne's cheekbones and temples whenever she so much as moved her face. Just imagine this while we admire her beauty on screen behind the scenes Yvonne Craig was enduring. The sensation of having an iron grip squeezing her skull. The pain was so intense that she struggled to focus on her lines and at times was on the verge of tears while forcing herself through action scenes. It's both ironic and heartbreaking because even a superhero had to give in to facial pain. Her strong reaction to the discomfort eventually forced the producers to reconsider. They redesigned the cowl to be looser and more comfortable before bringing it into the official Batman. It's a deeply human detail behind the superhero facade. While others celebrated her beauty, Yvonne Craig proved just how much endurance it took to maintain that irresistible look. At that point, her real enemy wasn't the Joker, it was the unforgiving costume design that prioritized appearance over the actor's comfort. 3. The deceptive wig trick, the simplest yet most effective disguise in Gotham.
Barbara Gordon begins her tantalizing transformation. And shortly emerges from her secret exit as Batgirl.
Have you ever wondered why a brilliant detective like Batman, or even her own father, Commissioner Gordon, couldn't recognize that Barbara Gordon was actually Batgirl? The answer doesn't lie in that tiny mask covering half her face, but in her true secret weapon, a bright red wig. It may sound simple, but it's arguably one of the most effective disguises in superhero history. In her everyday life, Barbara Gordon is a modest intellectual librarian with chestnut brown hair, glasses, and a reserved appearance. But the moment she steps into her secret room and puts on the purple suit, she transforms into a fiery Batgirl with striking red hair flowing dramatically. That drastic color contrast alone is enough to completely fool the eye, making it nearly impossible to connect the quiet bookworm with the bold crime fighter. The behind-the-scenes truth is even more interesting that vibrant red hair wasn't actually Yvonne Craig's real hair. It was permanently attached inside the cowl. If you're a sharp-eyed fan who pays attention to details, you might notice that in Barbara's secret room there's always a costume stand where the red wig sits right beside the mask. The transformation takes only seconds, quick, seamless, and far more effective than any high-tech disguise that Bruce Wayne could ever come up with. 2. The ballet combat technique when Batgirl fought in deadly high heels. There was always something uniquely elegant whenever Batgirl appeared and fought off Joker's henchmen. Unlike the brute force of Batman or the raw energy of Robin, her kicks moved with a graceful rhythm, almost as if she were gliding across a swan lake. That wasn't a coincidence, because behind that mask were legs trained for ballet stages and theater spotlights, not the dark alleys of Gotham. Yvonne Craig was originally a professional ballet dancer before entering the world of film. Because of that, instead of relying on stunt doubles, she performed nearly all of her own action scenes. Fight choreographers at the time took full advantage of this, transforming classical ballet movements into combat techniques that were beautiful to the point of breathtaking. But behind those mesmerizing 360-degree spins lay a very real danger. Just imagine performing some of the most technically demanding ballet moves on sharp high heels on a studio floor already made slippery by lights and dust. One small mistake, one misstep on landing, and Yvonne could have suffered severe injuries that might have ended both her dancing and acting career. Batgirl didn't just fight with strength, she fought with perfect balance on what might be the most impractical footwear in superhero history. Every frame we watch today stands as proof of a strange intersection between high art and pop entertainment, where beauty sometimes comes at the cost of the performer's own safety. 1. The mysterious disappearance of the original costumes, not a single one left intact.
Boiling oil.
Just a minute, Louis.
When the lively theme music of Season 3 faded away in 1968, the studios at 20th Century Fox gradually fell silent. Props like the Batphone and Batrope were either archived or liquidated, but there was one thing that seemed to vanish from history, almost completely leaving behind a void for collectors and fans alike: the original purple Lurex Batgirl costumes. After the series was abruptly canceled due to low ratings, Yvonne Craig expressed her wish to keep one of the costumes as a personal memento. But the studio's answer was always the same. There are no complete ones left. The reality was that the Lurex material was extremely sensitive to sweat and high-intensity studio lighting. Most of the costumes had been worn down, torn, or destroyed during physically demanding action scenes. However, Hollywood insiders have long whispered another possibility: that some costumes quietly disappeared from the wardrobe department just before liquidation. Many believe that certain crew members, captivated by Batgirl's beauty, secretly took pieces as personal keepsakes. To this day, while Batman masks from the Batman can still be found at auctions, even a single fragment of Yvonne Craig's original purple costume has become a true holy grail. Collectors are willing to pay enormous sums just to own a piece of that lost legend. That disappearance only deepens Batgirl's mythic aura, a dazzling figure who appeared briefly, then vanished into thin air, leaving behind an enduring sense of nostalgia for a golden era of American television. We've just uncovered 10 awkward yet fascinating truths behind that legendary costume. It turns out that behind the fiery look, the impossibly slim waist, and those graceful ballet kicks was a story of quiet sacrifice by Yvonne Craig. She wasn't just battling villains in Gotham, she was fighting against suffocating costumes, painful headpieces, and even the gender biases embedded right on set. Batgirl was not merely a last-ditch attempt to save a declining series. She became a symbol of resilience, turning backstage struggles into unforgettable on-screen moments. Be honest, which of these awkward truths surprised you the most? The costume that couldn't accommodate undergarments, or her bold strike for equal pay? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more journeys back in time, exploring the fascinating films of memory together.